Hello. I don't know if you noticed, but I have a few pairs of shoes. And that is directly related to today's video. Today's tag. Welcome to the Ponderings of Pete. I'm Pete, and this is the Converse Sneakers book tag. I was tagged by Klaus at now the Contradictorian, and the original tag was done by Christine Vallisted, I believe it is. Both Klaus's video and Christine's video will be linked down below. Without further ado, let's jump into it. It's a very simple tag. Very simple. There's one question. What books shaped your teen years? And I have a few thoughts. One of which I kind of talked about last tag video, in the ideal bookshelf tag, but I will talk a little bit more about that. So I mentioned Star Wars Expanded Universe. That was a bigger one during my time during my teen years, but I actually didn't read that much during my teen years. I got really busy. We moved, so my family, we lived in the center of all of our activities. And then because of my dad's work, we actually moved about 45 minutes away. So it took 30 to 45 minutes to get where we wanted to go. We moved out close to the country, close to where he was working. And I wasn't always the biggest reader in the car because of motion sickness. Sometimes my brother was definitely a bigger one. On top of all that, on top of all the activities and stuff, I just didn't read as much. I was concentrated on school. I was concentrated on, church. And if you've ever heard of Civil Air Patrol, that was another big thing. As well as I was on a tennis team during my high school years. There was Star Wars, which I talked about Thrawn, how he's like really great. Other series that really enthralled me for the time were I believe it was the Fate of the Jedi. They were white books with mostly primary colors at the bottom, bright colors at the bottom. They were coming out at this point in time, I believe. And it details Luke and his, spoiler, son, Ben, their journeys after the fallout from a certain Sith arising. I won't tell you who it is, but essentially the Sith took over a lot of things, and because of who he was, there was a lot of fear for the Jedi. So the two of them left the Order and went exploring. Specifically trying to find how the Sith came to be. It was a really good series. That's where it is introduced the Lost Tribe of the Sith. So you actually have the Sith race in there. They appear at some point because they crashed a long, long time ago on a planet and nobody knew where they were. They had no way of traveling beyond the universe, and I think in that book, maybe they did, but they just didn't really. They built their society, and it was a society of Siths, which was very interesting. What did those books teach me anything? No, I mean, those books kind of just gave me a love of Star Wars and kind of fed that. And that's kind of continued with all the Star Wars books I do have. I think most of them are packed away. The other books that I read, Agatha Christie, for certain, has been very much a constant throughout my life. I think my mindset when I'm reading is definitely affected by my mystery reading. I consider every book a mystery in its own way. I think that's why I like world building so much, because I view a world as a mystery to solve. Like, there's all these puzzle pieces about how this world works, what it is, does this work this way, and that's why I somewhat enjoy lore dumps in books. So yeah, that's that fostered the world building love, that fostered the just love the mystique of things in books. So if a book just doesn't hold back any punches and just like throws things on you, sometimes it's kind of annoying to me. It's another reason why I love the Malazan books, is because you can't directly understand everything that's going on in those books. You have to puzzle it out. You have to figure it out. Everything's mysterious. Everything's you don't know. And of course, Brandon Sanderson books. That's also why I like those. I did not get into Brandon Sanderson and Malazan until college and beyond, though. So, sadly. I read quite a bit of leadership books in this point in time as well. This is related to Civil Air Patrol. So for those of you who don't know, Civil Air Patrol is what is called an auxiliary of the Air Force, the United States Air Force. So think of it like a young cadets type of thing. We're not directly it's not a direct recruiting thing where it's like, okay, you'll be in Civil Air Patrol for so many years, and then you're going to go into the Air Force. It's more of like a club, sort of, that you join, like the Boy Scouts. But a lot different from the Boy Scouts because it's a lot more military focused. Specifically, there's 3 missions. You have aerospace education, because we're attached to the Air Force, of course. That's where we get our funding. Emergency services and cadet programs. So aerospace education, that involves like flying planes. Like I legit got to fly a plane at 12. I wasn't alone. I was, in the co-pilot seat technically. It was a tiny Cessna 3-person plane. So I had a licensed pilot next to me, and I actually got to fly the plane. Planes have 2 yokes for steering wheels, for people that don't know. So it's perfectly safe. Super fun for a 12-year-old to fly a plane. That's cool. The second part, emergency services. Civil Air Patrol cadets can actually be trained to help with search and rescue missions and things like that in America. And we actually do participate in a lot of them. We have missions where we're Overwatch type of deal, where we're in the sky looking for people on the ground. The joke that we would have is we would always go out and find the missing Boy Scouts that got lost. And there was a progression system, of course, and this all goes into cadet programs, is the leadership aspect goes into the cadet programs. I was, as a 17-year-old, helping run the cadet side of the squad, basically running the cadet side of the squadron. There's progressions, there's leadership positions that are available for cadets to take that give them increasing amounts of responsibility to grow them into leaders, which is really awesome. Yeah, so, and I got to learn about, running an organization and growing an organization. I was like 15 or 16. I was 16 when I got into it. And then I was 17 when I got out of it. And then I helped mentor kids that came behind me as well, which was super fun. One of the books that really I remember, not in vivid detail, but one of the ones that stuck with me. It's a book called The Starfish and the Spider. I think I read this around 15 or 16 during one of the camps that I went to as required reading. But it was talking about different types of organizations and how agile they are, specifically in regards to, the difference is with a spider, if you cut off its head, it dies. With a starfish, if you take off a part of it, it doesn't die. It's going to regrow back. You could cut apart a starfish at some point in time and put the 2 pieces separate and it grow into 2 separate starfish, because every cell has all the information it needs to grow. So the biggest example that was in this was, terrorist organizations like, I think Al-Qaeda was one of the big ones they used. It's hard to destroy an organization like Al-Qaeda because they have so many little cells. They're driven by fanaticism. If you cut off one head, many heads grow, like a hydra, or they'll just come back. Versus if you had an organization that is fueled by a cult of personality, applicable to everyday life. I know it sounds kind of violent and gruesome and weird, but if you build an organization, say you build a club, and you're very charismatic, almost to the point that you make it into a little bit of a cult, you could say. A cult of personality, where you have one person who's super charismatic at the head, who runs most things. They'll delegate, but the vision remains with the person. Everybody else relies on that person for their vision. If that person leaves the organization falls flat. So what you want to do in an organization, if you build an organization, you want to build it so that there are other people that are ready to take your place as soon as something happens to you. And I'm not saying you're going to die, but say you want to leave the organization, you don't want to run it anymore. You want to build it so that there are other capable people around you that have the vision and have the passion for the organization you're running and can take over for you in the end. And it's also, that type of organization is a lot less stressful to run as well, because you're not constantly getting the vision and passion sucked out of you by all these other people. So if you have a bad day, they don't have a bad day. They're still driven by their passion. That's kind of the lesson I've gotten from that book, and it's talked about different facets of that. I learned a lot from Civil Air Patrol. There's a huge leadership curriculum, aerospace curriculum. I know more about airplane engines than I do about car engines, if we're being completely honest. So I can translate some of that, but for combustion engines. One of these days, I do want to get my private pilot's license, because that's something that it kind of stuck in me. I think that would be fun to have. It's still kind of expensive. But Civil Air Patrol is one of the cheapest ways to, get a private pilot's license, because there's a lot of fees that are essentially fees that companies put on you, like, use of the airplane. Well, Celebrity Patrol will just be like, yeah, you're a member? Cool, you can use it. Editing Pete / not as tired Pete here. I will clarify that this is a vast oversimplification. We don't just let anybody become a member and then just walk on and fly planes and try to get their pilot's license. There is paperwork that goes into it, obviously, and we make sure that, the people aren't crazy, because there is background stuff that goes behind it. The biggest thing that happens is, you're probably not going to have a fee for using the airplane. And depending whether or not one of the senior members or adults in the organization is an actual flight instructor, you may not actually have to pay for a flight instructor as well. So it's more the money side that is streamlined. There is still paperwork per usual, because planes are expensive and planes can kill people. So essentially there's some fees that are taken care of. Anyways, that's my Converse book tag, me talking about Civil Air Patrol and a few other things. If you liked it. If you didn't like it, let me know. You can leave me a dislike if you want. It actually just fuels me more. We don't care about dislikes. We just dislike. Somebody didn't like this. Awesome. That's hilarious. Subscribe, turn on that bell notification, and I will see you tomorrow for the next tag.